Back to the flow chart. So, a lot of this looks familiar to you. There's 244, what do you want to do? Estimating parameters, I love that. Super fun, super fun. We've been testing parameters now. That's what we've been doing for the past couple weeks. So we're going to do for the next couple weeks and the remainder of the class, testing parameters. Which one? Today we're going to go back to little p. Little p, I think we'll bring you back in for next week and then we'll call it class if it's okay with you guys. Now if you think about what we've been doing, you could probably figure out what we're going to test next. We started by testing a single proportion, flu rates, and your pass rate on that blue, yellow circles test, and the Florida motorcycle death rate, and all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of things you guys tested with single proportion. Then we flopped over to a single average. Single average. Are these cars speeding in my town? Has the IQ changed if we smack them over the head with a 2x4? Things like that. Then we said, okay, that's good, but that's not enough. Then we have to do a matched pair test to see if something's changed after an experiment on the same person, and we love that. And that's all up here on this first line. There's your single mean. Shoot. Last week, and on Monday of this week, we added in 2 averages and also 2 proportions. So we've got a handle now on the way of testing single means and proportions and double means and proportions. That's what we've gotten so far. There's one thing left to do. What if you have more than 2? What if you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7? Say that again.
Hire a statistician.
Hire. You guys are becoming statisticians. We'll need to hire them, save your money, and put it elsewhere. We'll do far enough fire.
Yeah,
You always email me.
The first thing
you always use students at Discover.
You feel overburdened.
No, but okay, good answer. All good answers. I get constant email and call for help with this kind of stuff all the time. But let's answer that question. How do you deal with that? So, to bring that up, just close down this flow chart again. I want to talk about Apple. So, these are some fun little articles that I dug up online about the Apple Shuffle, and in particular the Apple Randomizer. You might have remembered a few years back. What's the date on these things? Do I have the dates on? I think I have the dates on. That's a shuffle, right?
What, 2006? 2007?
There's 2007 up there. Okay, so 2007. A couple of years ago, Apple went through a bit of an issue with some customers where they were complaining that the iShuffle, or whatever it's called, the iPod Shuffle, wasn't shuffling properly. It was too clumpy. So you're going to do a similar question on your last exam, which is when you analyze my American Heart Association CPR final exam, which I totally freaking aced. But the idea, when I was taking that exam, my gut looked at that exam and I said, there's too many clumps of letters, like too many A's together, too many D's together, things like that. People were saying the same thing about, what's that?
It's a random events clump.
They do, but it looked too clumpy. That was the point. You see what Kate just said is the point. Thank you, Kate. That was a beautiful statement. She said, random events clump. Yes, they do, but they can also clump too much. So the question is, how do we determine when the clumpiness level is too clumpy or just clumpy enough or not clumpy enough? Now that question will be answered in your exam, because I actually had to develop a test to test it. One doesn't exist, and I'm like, well, we can make this up. And when you say, but you might think to yourself, how can you just make up a test? Because you know what random is, and you have random number generators. So I had Excel generate 25 random numbers at a time in groups of 4, or of 4 types. And then you compare your results to that, and you say, well, is it too far off using p-values? That's the beauty of that. But this is a different story. This was, I'm getting too much John Mayer in my mix, which is not that hard to believe. All right? Well, anyway, take my personal opinions aside. I actually got an email from a student in Spain 2 years ago who said, I turned my iPod on, hit shuffle, and she got, what was it, 4 of the same artist followed by 4 more of the same artist. And she had like 1,000 or 1,500 songs on the iPod. It's like, what's the chance of that happening? And that was a fun one to answer. Answered like 5 or 6 different ways. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, right off the bat, it's pretty rare. But somewhere in the line of a shuffle, pretty common actually. So that's the idea. How do we wrap all these ideas up? So, I mean, you see right here, I said, quick, think of a number between 1 and 20. How? And I'll think of another one, and I see, I can't really read that because it's super blurry.
Another one and another.
And another and another. I actually tried this with my Math 105 students. I had them try to simulate the flipping of a coin. So I had them go around the room, I said, pick heads or tails, go! And I pointed to them. And they kept saying, heads, heads! And what I noticed was they kept alternating an awful lot. They would say heads and then tails and heads and then tails. They were anti-clumping. Right? The anti-clumping, which is almost as bad as too much clumping as far as randomness goes. I mean, if you flipped a coin and it went heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, and kept going heads, tails, heads, tails, what would you think?
Black magic.
Something's going on, because it shouldn't do that. There should be some clumping, but not too much. If you also flipped the coin and it went heads, 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 heads. So somewhere in between those two extremes is like what's okay, or what's okay within a margin of error. Yeah,
But doesn't the iTunes algorithm want to blend musical styles?
I don't know that.
I think that's.
But
what
part of it
they-
is randomness. Now that's, I think, based on user ratings, I think. And it's also dependent on the song being stylistically matched correctly.
And I think that's why it's the same artist,
Really
because they're
good.
stylistically the same as they move from.
Assuming that's the way it is. Now I've got songs on my iPod. Now granted, the music goes a little bit more deviant. You'll see some of it here. But they're calling things heavy metal when they're actually just like pop punk from the
I
80s.
know.
So I don't have an answer for that one. And that would be an anti-randomness thing. But there's still a random number generator at work in the shuffle. So what I want to do, I'm going to mute this down. What I want to do is, I want to test this randomness idea on the iPod. Collect some data. I brought my iPhone, which I think has the same randomizer as an iPod. I think. I mean, they haven't changed. From what I can tell, they haven't changed anything. Brandon, do you mind? So we're going to test the iPod, phone, pad, whatever, randomizer. And ask ourselves, is it random enough? So now, this might seem a little bit superfluous. You're testing an iPod. Like, what's the point of testing an iPod? But realize, anytime you have to analyze any kind of data that's supposed to be tested, that's supposed to be distributed randomly, you now will have a tool for that. Sure, it's applying to 10 songs on an iPod. It could very easily apply to six counties in Oregon, which is one of the questions I was going to put in the last exam, was testing flu rates versus percentages to see if there was agreement in the percentage population of Oregon versus the flu rates that happened, or the flus that happened a couple years ago. But your exam was full enough. It didn't need anything else in there too, so I just pulled that back. So let's play the iPod real quick. I want to play through the 10 songs I've got on it. Now, they're not full songs, they're snippets, little 8 or 9 or 10-second snippets. That's what we're going to use for our data. And I'm going to play it straight through first. So is the iPod random enough? And I've got a little macro that we can keep track of the songs we hear on the phone. So let's escape out of here. And then we'll go to, oh, you can't see that, sorry. We'll go to here. All right, so we're going to play it through. So I hit shuffle and let it go. We'll see what happens. All right, let's move back out. I'm going to change the playlist and change it back. That might have something to do with it too. There's the muffs.
I don't like you and I won't pretend to now. I'm gonna get you out.
Okay, here's run the MC. I'm going to let it play through. I'm going to interrupt them. You can interrupt the show. How about that? That is one. That voice. There are 10 songs on the iPod. We just heard all 10 of them, one at a time.
I feel like it just went down a list.
Well, it basically did. It created, now this I think is how shuffle works. And I'm glad they actually call it shuffle. Because shuffle is different than random. Let's think about that, right? Let's think about the idea of shuffling versus randomness. Let's turn this